In this video, I'm going to introduce our topic of human anatomy and physiology by discussing the various life functions that are carried out by all the body systems that we have. I'm also going to talk about the very important concept of homeostasis, which is essential for maintaining life. There are 11 different human body systems that we will be covering in this course. Some of them you're probably already fairly familiar with. Most people have a pretty good idea about what goes on in their digestive system, and they might understand how the respiratory system is put together to allow for gas exchange. People are less likely to know what our lymphatic system is doing to keep us healthy, and usually the integumentary system is one where you're just not sure what that word means. So we'll be covering all these systems throughout this course, and we'll be talking about how they work together to keep our bodies alive and functioning, and how they support each other in very important roles. But along with looking at these body systems that make up a whole organism, we'll be also considering some of the other levels of organization. Remember that life can be shown as becoming more and more complex, that things are first organized in terms of atoms that then become molecules, very small molecules or sometimes very big molecules, especially when it comes to living things. We have macromolecules, and then those are forming organelles that are found in our cells. Different types of cells come together to form tissues. Different types of tissues come together to form organs, and then organ systems. So as we move through our discussion of the organ systems, we also will be touching on these other levels of organization. As you go from the atom onto the organism, the actual structures become more and more complex, but a breakdown in any of the lower levels, a breakdown in the organelles in cells, will affect everything else in the system. And many of our diseases are due to a breakdown somewhere earlier in the chain, even though we might see the problem on the organ system or even the organism level. There are a number of important life functions that these different body systems maintain. And this is what allows us to live and have sort of a healthy existence. Our organ systems maintain the boundaries that determine what is the inside of our bodies as compared to what is the outside. That can be both on a cellular level, because there's an inside and outside to cells, or on the organism level itself, inside and outside of our whole body. These body systems also are involved in movement. Some of them are more involved in movement than others. Our muscular skeletal system is what actually helps move us around around the world. But within the body, things move. Food moves through the digestive system. Blood moves through blood vessels. Urine is produced and then moves from the kidneys to the bladder to the outside. Body systems are also responsive. They can sense change in the environment because of certain neurons that are present in the systems. And then those neurons, by sending messages to the brain, allow us to react to that change in the environment in an appropriate way. We've already mentioned digestion. The function of digestion is to break down food into molecules that can be absorbed by the body and then, of course, used in many different ways. On a foundational level, life happens because of chemical reactions. It's really pretty amazing if you think about it. And all of those chemical reactions that allow life to happen are known as metabolism. Another important function that allows life to happen is reproduction. This is not only on an organism level, but also for the individual cells, because cells have to be replaced, old cells die, new cells need to be made, and so reproduction has to always be occurring from a cellular level on up. Another key function is excretion, or getting rid of waste products from the body. These non-useful substances can actually be poisonous if they stick around too much. Some of them come from digestion. Leftover undigested food, of course, is solid waste, which we get rid of. And then our metabolism produces some waste products that can be harmful if they build up, and they also need to be removed from the body. And finally, the last function I want to highlight is growth, which can involve both increasing the size of an organism, so as you grow from a child to an adult, but also because you need to have new cells for repair and replacing the ones that just age out of their existence. Growth is another essential life function that has to happen and happens within all these body systems. Your body has basic survival needs, things that it has to have in a balanced way to stay alive. If all these life functions are happening by the different organ systems, but these basic survival needs are not present, then life will not be able to continue. Of course, logically, I'm sure you can imagine that nutrients, things provided by food, are an essential need to allow us to survive. These molecules from food are used for building structures in cells and, of course, then on organs, tissues and organs in the bigger organ system. But food, along with providing us stuff to build bodies, is also important for providing energy that powers those many metabolic reactions that happen. In order to get that energy from food, we need to have oxygen. So our bodies need a way to bring in the oxygen. Water is extremely important. About 2/3 of your body weight is due to the amount of water found in and around your cells. And that water provides the base for the solutions, the watery substance that these chemical reactions happen in. So the chemical reactions that allow things to be alive happen in a solution, and water is the solvent for that solution. Also, our bodies produce various secretions, things like sweat and tears and such, which are basically water. Another important survival need is the appropriate temperature. Our normal body temperature is somewhere around 98.6 Fahrenheit. It varies a little bit throughout the day, and it varies a little bit from person to person. But these metabolic reactions, these chemical reactions, can be sped up or slowed down by changes in temperature, and that usually is not a good thing. And finally, we need to have a certain atmospheric pressure in order to live to survive because of the gas exchange that has to happen in the lungs. We have to have the right pressure externally and also the right amount of pressure for the individual gases in that atmosphere in order for us to take in the oxygen we need and to give off the carbon dioxide we don't. So maintaining all of these survival needs and the different life functions is very dependent on a process known as homeostasis. Homeostasis is maintaining a state of internal balance between not too much and not too little of any one thing. And that is what allows you to survive. The ability of your body, the various parts of your body and the parts of your organ systems have to keep things in balance. If a system gets out of balance, then the body responds in a way that will bring it back into balance. In general, homeostasis mechanisms have three components. There is some type of sensor or receptor that is picking up whatever we're paying attention to. So say we're worried about the amount of oxygen being brought into the body. So there's oxygen receptors that monitor in the blood. There's also carbon dioxide receptors that monitor when carbon dioxide levels get too high. So both oxygen levels that are too low or carbon dioxide levels are too high are being watched and sensed by various structures within your body. There is a control center, and of course the control center of your body is your brain, and in general your brain is going to be the one kind of taking care of the responses for homeostasis. And in that control center, most of the things that are kept in balance have a set point. So it has sort of an ideal figure, whatever, whether it's a body temperature or amount of oxygen or amount of acid in the blood or whatever component, there's something that's ideal, and we call that the set point. And then the control center then evaluates what the receptor is telling it in terms of what the set point says is correct, and then will prompt a response, typically from muscles or glands, that will bring things back into balance. We don't have just one action that happens, and there's a continuum known as a feedback loop that keeps on sending information back from receptors, back through to the control center, and again, adjusting it with the responder so that everything, again, is kept in balance. It's not a straight line balance, things just don't stay unchanging, but around the set point, you have a little bit above, a little bit below, a little bit above, a little bit below, and overall things will then stay on a fairly level plane when homeostasis is working for any one of the mechanisms that we have in our body. Here's just an image that's trying to show you that same thing. If we think about there's an imbalance like a teeter-totter, instead of being level, it's gotten off balance. So one side has gotten too low and the other side has gotten too high. And so this produces some kind of change, some variable the body is able to monitor. The receptor detects that change. It sends that information around to the control center, generally the brain, which then sends a response direction to another part of the body that can make a response. And that response then feeds back, changes what's going on so that the receptor will get new information and know if we have to get more response coming from the various effectors in the body. There are two types of feedback loops. Nearly all of the homeostatic mechanisms are negative feedback loops because as things come back into balance, as the body responds through the various processes, it turns itself off. This diagram works you through that process for body temperature. So in the center, we have the ideal body temperature. If the body temperature should increase, if you get hot, say from exercising, then there are various cooling mechanisms that will be activated, like sweating, or your blood vessels will dilate closer to the surface of your skin so that you can give off more heat in the environment. As a result, your body temperature then will decrease, which will cause the body to, it will stop sort of the message that it is too high being sent to the control center. If it goes too far and it decreases too much, then we have various heating mechanisms that will kick in, shivering being one. As we contract our muscles, we actually are giving off heat, so that helps warm, so shivering helps warm you until the body temperature then will increase again to the point that we get back to the ideal temperature. So in negative feedback loops, they turn themselves off as whatever the characteristic that's being monitored, as that characteristic comes back in balance. There are a few positive feedback loops. They are not very common because the response in a feedback loop stimulates the process even more until some type of major change happens. So positive feedback loops tend to happen for a very short period of time, and there's something that will trigger an end because there is a change. Childbirth and labor is one example of a positive feedback loop. Another one is the blood clotting cascade. But just to think about how childbirth works, labor is triggered because the head of the baby is pushing against the cervix. That's at the bottom of the uterus. Here's the birth canal, the vagina. And so that triggers nerve impulses that are sent to the brain that stimulates a hormone known as oxytocin, which is carried to the uterus, and that stimulates uterine contractions and pushes the baby's head towards the cervix. So then we have more pushing on the cervix, which means more nerve impulses are sent to the brain, which means more oxytocin is released and sent in the bloodstream to the uterus until you have more contractions. This will continue to intensify until the baby is born. Then there's no more head pushing against the cervix, and that is what shuts down positive feedback loops. But there's only a few positive feedback loops. Nearly all of our homeostatic mechanisms are maintained by negative feedback loops. So check your understanding. Did you take good notes so that you can use them to explain how the human body illustrates the various levels of organization that we see in living things? Can you describe at least 3, if not more, important life functions that are necessary for survival that are carried out by our body systems? Can you talk about at least 2 of those basic survival needs that our body systems allow us to maintain and get what we need? Can you explain why we need homeostasis, why we need to stay in balance? And can you describe the difference between these negative and positive feedback loops? If you don't feel like you fully understand any of these topics, go back and listen to those sections of the video again. And if you're still confused, come talk to me and we'll see what we can do to clear up the areas of confusion.